On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, the big three on offense through the air, Jalen Hurts, DeVonta Smith, and A.J. Brown, they're lighting up training camp. On the other side, do we have concerns about the slot corner, Avonte Maddox, and his long-term health? Also, who are the most important backups for the Eagles in 2023? All that and more on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Eagles, your first listen each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by my co-host and the birthday boy today, Gino Camilleri. What's up, brother?
Not too much, man. It's August and football is right around the corner, Lou, and this is my favorite time of year. You hop on and all of a sudden you're getting all these updates from all of the training camps around the NFL. You're seeing little clips here and there, and today we get fantastic news that your quarterback, who arguably could have been the MVP last year, is not only succeeding in camp, but he seems to be the belle of the ball there.
Surgical is what it sounds like, Gino, which is exciting. It just sounds like everything. I said this on the show yesterday. It's all just feeling like almost muscle memory now for him. Progressions, going through reads, footwork, accuracy. That's scary when an athlete like that can get to that level mentally and with confidence, and you have the weapons he does. It sounds like DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown, not to nobody's surprise, are completely tearing up the secondary.
And the things you're hearing now are how they're starting to connect more on some of those back shoulder throws and those timing routes. And these are the things that we've always wanted, where you can grow with a young quarterback and a young wide receiver. I always look at the model of Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers a little bit older at that time, but where you're able to bring in this young receiver in Devontae, who at the time his route running was unbelievable, i.e. DeVonta Smith, i.e. A.J. Brown, and you can work those little nuanced details of these routes, which take time. It's not just something where you can come in as a wide receiver and produce right away, especially with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who he didn't have the best accuracy to start, but then all of a sudden he's this completely different quarterback where he's bang on and he is accurate, and you got to have these guys that you can trust to go up and catch the football and have great wingspans and can get yards after the catch, because they know to win it's going through Jalen, it's going through Devontae, it's going through A.J. Brown, because right now the connection that they have is only the tip of the iceberg. It's only going to continue to get better. And you're only 2 weeks into camp.
Right, exactly. And they're only heading into year 2 together, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. Year 3 for DeVonta.
Yeah, they're 5 years younger than me. I'm freaking so much older than these guys.
Yeah, it's your Avonte Maddox day, 29.
Yes, sir.
No, yeah, I mean, I think you actually made a good point I haven't really even thought of. And last year, not that they were non-existent in the offense, but you're right about like the timing routes and like back shoulder plays. That wasn't really... I wouldn't say that's not something A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith did last year, but I think that's a part of the game, like when they're so on the same page with their quarterback, that you're going to see that a whole lot more, and that's just another type of explosive play that you can bring into the fold. So that's something I didn't even really think of, that with Jalen now, just trusting and knowing where they're going to be and putting the ball in the right spot so consistently, that makes it so tough for a corner to defend, already having to deal with those star talents at receiver, and then that kind of timing and anticipation. Just a brutal nuclear combination.
And it sounds like he's continuing to have that connection with Dallas Goedert as well over the middle. And Quez Watkins, your boy, seems to be shining each and every single day. Good. And that's what you want. When you go to camp, right, you only get a limited amount of reps, especially in the Nick Sirianni era, right? These practices aren't 2 hours. You don't have 2 a days.
Today was the first time they wore shoulder pads.
Yeah, Brandon Graham said it was like the first day of school. They hadn't really even been practicing up until this point. But you do have to have those walkthrough type of practices to get that timing. But when you get to the pads and things are just a little bit quicker, Lou, this is the type of result that you wanted. Because a lot of the time in training camp, the defense is much more advanced than the offense, because the offense usually has to come in with a new coordinator. They have to learn the new language. It takes a while to install. Defenses can go out and fly around. Well, when your offense is making as many one-on-one individual plays as they are in camp, that's promising. And the idea of muscle memory, Lou, that's what it has to be. It has to be efficient, where you're getting the best out of each and every rep that you are able to go out there, because in this world where you're only getting a couple practices a week, maybe even a couple padded practices this entire month before you go play a game, this is when it matters. And to hear that result out of your big three and the guys like Dallas Goedert and the Jalen Carters of the world on the other side of the ball, the guys that are supposed to step up when the pads come on, that's promising. And I'm excited that it comes through your leader in Jalen Hurts, who, what a sicko, putting the picture of him walking off the field with the Chiefs confetti as his background on his phone. You don't think that guy wants to win that?
I love whoever found that. It was, I think, Brandon Graham's live stream of all the rookies singing, as they do every year. They make the rookies go up on the stage.
Gotta tune in every night. Make sure you do.
I always run through, a lot of players stream it live on Instagram. I always go to BG's stream, obviously, right? It's the most entertaining. But somebody zoomed in on Jalen Hurts in the front row, zoom in on his grainy phone to see that it's a picture of him walking through the confetti. But hey, man, it's motivation.
I love it.
Yeah, but that's Jalen Hurts for sure. And I think that's why you're seeing the results so far in training camp. He looks stellar through 2 weeks, and we've been talking so much about the new arrivals because that's the exciting new thing, but the quarterback just being lights out every day is something that you can't overlook, even when that's an expectation. And Gino, again, with the chemistry thing, that's so important for the NFL. Like, obviously, quarterback play is the most important way to sustain winning games, right? Top tier coaching, general managers, line play on both sides of the ball, but chemistry in the passing game, like New England, Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady in New England and in Tampa Bay for as long as they were winning championships. Mahomes and Kelsey. A lot else on that roster is ever changing. It's Reed, Kelsey, Mahomes. I mean, you mentioned Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, the rapport that they built up. Look at Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Pretty much any team that's been consistently good for 5+ years, they have at least one of these connections. And you're seeing that too with Cincinnati, of course, Burrow and Chase and T. Higgins.
And you have to have not only the trust, but the players to go and do it, because it's one thing to have guys and have a quarterback that can throw the football, but it's another to make those plays.
Well, right, like Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz had great chemistry, but it was a limited connection and what kind of plays they can make.
Yeah, now you're talking about these timing routes, right? How many times have you seen Aaron Rodgers throw a touchdown to Devontae Adams where the ball's out of his hand before Devontae even makes the move at the top of his stem? Exactly. And Jalen Hurts, if you take a step back to last year, Lou, we looked in the beginning of the season and we're saying, was it out of not trusting Jalen, or was it the offensive coordinator didn't seem to know, but they didn't have those little option routes, those little, what are we going to do against the blitz? Those things where you have to kind of trust your receiver. That's where we're at. You have seen enough to go and trust him to
now
do that.
You know, with that connection, with Jalen's improvements in the passing game, that's something you should be implementing right away. But I would say from the start of the season, we didn't know the step that Jalen was going to take as a passer. So I think it makes sense why it wasn't there for a bit.
And now you have that. And now not only are you ahead of the curve, but you're not handcuffed at all. This kid isn't handcuffed. And that's the scariest part, right? Like, let Jalen Hurts out of the cave or out of his cage and let him cook. Like, let the kid just be intelligent at the line of scrimmage. Let him go up and look at coverages. Let him continue to grow and be more than just an athlete. Look at Patrick Mahomes, what he said. He's like, the first 2 years I was just playing football, and he's like, now I'm actually reading the defenses.
Figuring it out.
It takes a lot. The NFL is like learning a new language when it comes to
what was it, Tom Brady
defenses.
that said, when somebody asked him about retiring, he's like, I finally mastered this game on a mental side. Why
and it took him 20 years, right?
Like, it took me 20 years to perfect this game and fully figure it out. Why now would I stop?
And you have to have that want and that will to continue to do that. And at 24 years old, with the connection that you have in those guys, with the trust that you have in the offensive line, this is the result. In efficiency and positive production is what you need. Just get 1% better every single day in camp. And as long as you're not taking steps back in Camp Blue, where you go and look at the guy behind Jalen, Marcus Mariota's thrown 4 interceptions and
has not sounded good from a passing perspective. Yeah, Mariota has.
And then Jalen's just lights out up top.
Yeah. But I think we knew with Mariota, I mean, you're bringing him in for his mobility, and I'm sure in games, hopefully he'll be better in the preseason, but at least QB1 is stellar right now through training camp, through a week and a half. All right, Gino, let's flip the script. We're going to talk some defense coming up next. Concerns about Avonte Maddox and the slot on defense. We'll get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Lyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your rosters. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Week. And this one's all about if you want to wait on running back. A lot of zero RB strategies going around now in fantasy leagues. Maybe you're going to wait on, Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler and, pretty much that entire top group that you'd have to take over a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase. Let's say you want to go receiver. Looks like we're going to head down to Detroit and take Jahmyr Gibbs here. And, I think a rookie that I think we're kind of surprised Detroit took as early as they did, based on value and, how you draft and what you do at that position. But Jahmyr Gibbs, from a fantasy perspective, coming in, DeAndre Swift now is in Philadelphia. Yeah, they signed David Montgomery. But for the value of where you're going to get him and the complete overall weapon that he will be for a team that's pretty balanced and is going to run the football, I think and Jared Goff throws to his running backs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs, if you want to wait, that's a really good value pick a few rounds later if you want to go receiver heavy, or let's say you're a guy that takes Travis Kelce or a Patrick Mahomes.
Very reminiscent of the James Cook pick for the Buffalo Bills last year, in my opinion, where it's a crowded running back room, but who's going to give you the most bang for your buck? I think it's Gibbs. Why were they okay getting rid of DeAndre Swift for next to nothing, sending him to Philadelphia? Because they know what he can do. And if you're in a PPR league, especially, if you want a third down back that's going to go and get you at least 7 to 10 points, in my opinion, per week, just in the pass game. And then what happens when they figure out that this kid can run like a bat out of hell? He's going to be a stud down the stretch, that's for sure, in fantasy.
For sure. Vinny Lyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy title this year. And eBay Motors knows winning a championship is about each player being a perfect fit on your team. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, and struts. You name it, eBay Motors has it, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC up, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you've got everything set up for success from the get-go with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. eBay Motors, let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Shout out to our everydayers, Monday through Friday, for making us your first listen. Gino, training camp heading into week 2. Today was the first padded practice of camp. And I think it's interesting because on both sides of the ball, there have been tons of standouts. And I don't think there's been really many people that are struggling. We mentioned Marcus Mariota in segment 1. I think Nicholas Morrow has not done much to make people feel better about the linebacker position, at least from what we've heard. Christian Ellis is getting first-team reps consistently with Nakobe Dean, which is a little concerning. And this guy I want to talk about because we really don't a whole lot, and it's interesting. But it's not that he's struggling on the field right now. He's just still trying to get healthy. It's Avonte Maddox in the slot. And we all know when Avonte is healthy, he's an elite slot corner. There's not many guys better than him. Last year in 9 games when he did play, he was great. The issue is he missed 8 games. But you look at 2021, 2 years ago, how good he was, earning that extension. That's a guy that you need on the field. And so hopefully this year, he's still dealing with that toe injury that he said today during his press conference he played through in the playoffs because he, of course, wanted to be a part of that run. I think this is a guy that, I'm not going to say he's a complete Jenga piece where the whole team falls apart without him, but they need him out there because in the NFL now, there's a lot of teams that have 3 really good receivers. There's a couple in your division, and a lot of star receivers move inside the slot. Just look at in your own division in Dallas. CeeDee Lamb plays primarily inside, and the Eagles don't move Darius Slay and James Bradbury around, or at least they haven't in years past with Gannon. So Maddox is an important piece, and he's got to stay a lot healthier than he was last year because he's a great player.
And the proof is in the pudding in the NFL that the Eagles, they now have a guy to coach the nickel position because they know how important it is. They don't just have a corner coach. They brought in another guy.
In a spacing league, slot players on offense too, so crucial. The difference is DeVonta can go inside a lot, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown. On this side of the ball, again, Slay and Bradbury are not in there.
No, and there's a reason why they're cross-training Zach McPherson there. Yeah. There's a reason Josiah Scott is still hanging around this team because they know that position, it's been something that they've continued to try and invest in time and time again. I mean, look at
how good Patrick Robinson was for this team in 2017.
Patrick Robinson, Nickel Roby Coleman, I mean, Cravon LeBlanc, all of those guys played huge roles for you at some point in their respective seasons when they were there, right? And Cravon LeBlanc might have had the biggest interception for you in the entire season.
Oh my gosh,
in that playoff.
Crucial in the 2018 playoff run.
And look at Avonte Maddox when he's on the field. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the threat of a great slot receiver is so much more abundant in today's game where guys are motioning around. They want to win on matchups. They want to set up two-way goes where they can use your leverage against you. And you have to be a top-of-the-line athlete to play that position. Not everybody can do it, and Avonte has done it at such a high level.
And he's such a natural kind of player for them for that spot, Gino, right? And undersized,
smart,
athletic,
he's tough,
smart,
he can tackle.
Short area,
all the things that they want him to do in that area.
Exactly. And when you look at, I know you mentioned they have Josiah Scott back, and he played a lot in the slot last year at times when Maddox was coming in and out of the lineup. But they, outside of that, I don't really want to rely on Scott again. They don't really have a natural backup slot corner. You know, when you look at, of course, as you mentioned, Zach McPherson is cross-training, but he's really never played in the slot before. Greedy Williams is not a natural slot. Kelly Ringo certainly not, at least as of right now. And you don't have a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson who came down back into that natural position he played in New Orleans last year. You really don't have that safety. I mean, Sidney Brown could probably play inside better than Edmonds or Blankenship, but Edmonds and Blankenship to me aren't like CGJ type of players where I trust them one-on-one against a CeeDee Lamb in the slot.
No, that's the thing that I'm terrified of. And even a bigger guy like Darren Waller, who I keep going back to.
You don't have a Malcolm Jenkins, man. I mean, Malcolm Jenkins used to play in the slot all the time.
It was reported today, though, I believe by Jimmy Kempsky, that they were running some 3 safety looks. They had Kevon Wallace, Reed Blankenship, Terrell Edmonds out there as the big dime type of linebacker, which that's probably going to be his role, Lou. Like, it might not be your favorite pick, but he might be the best suited guy for the job. He did it in Pittsburgh, and they're going to have to find somebody to do that. And it might be a collective approach. And Zach said that he was cross-training for this position sometime last year, about halfway through, but he's never really seen game action there either. So the only way to win here is to keep Avonte healthy. And it's unfortunate that he doesn't have the best track record. And that's the thing about the National Football League that makes it so difficult. It's like, this guy you just invested in, he's so good when he is on the field. But do we have to find an upgrade? Because the times he isn't on the field, it can come back to haunt you. And when you went down Chauncey Gardner, or when you went down him last year and you had to move Chauncey around, then that moves
before that,
guys around as well. Josiah Scott you have to put out there, and you have to make everybody climb the depth chart that they might not be ready for. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this kid is healthy the entire season.
I agree.
Because he's a top 5 nickel corner any day of the week.
And last year when he played, elite. 2021, he played all 16 games.
Definitely.
He was incredible, and that's what earned him that extension. But before that, he has suffered injuries at times in his career. 2020, he played in 10 games. 2019, 12. 2018, 13. Again, take that with a grain of salt, too, though, because they were running corner by committee, basically, and he wasn't always a starter at times. He was playing safety at times in 2018, too. But I think, last year, he just could not stay on the field, and I don't think it killed this team. Obviously, they made it to the Super Bowl. But, Gino, I think he's a sneaky, underrated piece of the puzzle that we really don't talk about enough because he's sandwiched in between 2 elite boundary corners. But Maddox is very important. In the slot nowadays, again, you need to have good players on both sides of the ball. It's a tough, again, with both sidelines receivers get to use, you got to have an explosive guy there. And Maddox is that guy by far. There's a big drop-off. There's other spots, when it comes to backups for the Eagles, it's not a huge drop off. Like look at defensive tackle, corner, especially in the slot. I think it would be. So yeah, you don't want to lose Maddox. What would you say? That kind of leads to our final topic. who would you say are the most important backups on this team? Like if an Avonte Maddox went down, like I think suddenly Josiah Scott plays a crucial role, or whoever decides to jump in there. Are there certain players or positions where you're like, if this guy goes down, this backup can have the impact of him is massive. Like whereas linebacker, I don't think that plays a huge part, right?
Zach McPherson for sure is probably my number one. I would have to say. I think it's evident why, because
corners
of how
can kill you, man. They can kill you.
Oh yeah, I mean we've seen it, Lou. How long did we have to sit here and suffer having guys that couldn't run in a league where you had to run?
Yeah, when Devontae Bosby had to be out there. I mean,
yeah, and even before that, the Kerry Williams, the Bradley Fletcher, like you got to have very good athletes at that position. And the good thing is, though, Lou, they have a bunch of young corners, so I'm excited. It seems that they're trusting Job a lot with the twos so far, and Mekhi Gardner has been playing pretty physical, it seems like, in the first day out in pads. And the thing is, it's going to be an approach by committee at that position. So can you pick a true backup outside of Zach who would be the instant impact starter if Avonte goes down in that secondary? I would say no. But if I go a little more inside, like let's say Jordan Davis goes down, how important is Marlon Tuipulotu for you?
That's a good one. Yeah, because you really don't, outside of him, have another natural nose tackle type of defensive lineman.
No, you're calling in Dominican Sue or Linval Joseph.
Are you bringing back
Linval?
Yeah, honestly, you probably are. So Tuipulotu, super important. I think, too, on the other side of the ball, another lineman, Tyler Steen, it looks like Cam Jurgens is going to be the right guard. I mean, from all accounts, from reporters, it sounds like it's not even, I don't want to say it's not a competition, but Cam seems like the guy unless something happens. Tyler Steen is crucial because he wears so many hats. Like that could be your primary backup at right guard. It could be your primary backup at left tackle and right tackle, both tackle spots. Even he might end up playing all 4 or 5 positions up front. And especially if Lane Johnson goes down, we saw the impact of that with Jack Driscoll on the right side. Tyler Steen's not going to be Lane Johnson, but he would have to be better than Driscoll last year. That held this team back so much. I saw PFF said Jason Kelsey's the Eagles' most important non-quarterback, which you could make the argument for. I might say it's Lane Johnson. Every time he's out of this lineup, the team looks different. So I think Steen is crucial too.
And I think there's a handful of guys. You could throw Dennis Kelly in there as well. Bringing him in as a
for the same
veteran
reason
is a great move this time of year. I mean, it just makes you feel at ease, right?
That's how I felt with that signing. It wasn't exciting. I'm like, okay, we got somebody that has a lot of starts.
You're bringing in a guy who can pitch the 7th inning for you after your starter gives you 6 clean innings. Yeah, right. We just got to get to our closer if that's the case. And that's how kind of Big V was for a little bit. I think the floor is what Big V was as a player. When you look at Jack Driscoll, has he gotten to where Big V was? Close, but I think he's been less reliable at times. Yeah,
at right guard. 2021, when he played right guard, he was that level of player. Tackle, though, last year, he wasn't there.
No, I totally agree. And he's not big enough, in my opinion, to withstand that tackle. That's why you bring in Tyler Steen. That's why you bring in Dennis Kelly. And maybe the backup center role, Lou. Like, who is it going to be? Brett Toth is taking second-team center snaps, and the guy's a natural right tackle. And he can't snap the football, people are saying. He can't get the ball off.
The backup offensive line so far does sound like they're struggling, which has been part of Mariota's struggles too. But, you're right at center, especially if they don't want to move multiple, like you mentioned at safety last year, if they didn't want to move Chauncey down and suddenly there's a new safety in the backfield replacing 2 players, if Cam stays at right guard, instead of I would, of course, move Jurgens inside to center and put Steen at right guard. But the Eagles traditionally don't like doing that. So you're right. If Jurgens stays at right guard, I mean, who plays center? That's a big spot.
It is a big spot.
And you got to be able to snap the football. I mean,
what Kenny Gainwell said today in their running back room, they have a mantra that you just listen to the damn center. And how important is that to a young quarterback in Jalen Hurts, and how many teams surround their young quarterbacks with veteran centers for that exact reason, because you need a guy that you could trust to be your second quarterback. And it's going to be interesting when one of these guys does go down, Lou, because it's the National Football League. You're not going to make it through like the Eagles did last year with 21 out of 22 starters. It's more likely to be closer than to what happened in 2017. You'll probably find an average between the two seasons. But who's going to step up? And to see guys that the Mekhi Gardners of the world, the guys that are a little bit under the radar stepping up in camp, that's the exciting part, where you can see that you have guys that are ready to step up when called upon. But when the lights get pretty bright and it's a game, we'll see in 11 days from now who's ready to roll out there.
Crazy enough, man. Less than 2 weeks away from the Eagles' first preseason game, so that's exciting. We got you covered right here on Locked On Eagles, Monday through Friday, covering all things training camp and preseason. As we're only it's August 1st. It's crazy. We are getting close to the regular season, so make sure you subscribe to the only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. We'll see you tomorrow for another edition of the show. Shout out to our everydayers. We'll be back Wednesday through Friday. I'm Louis DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go, Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.